Hello everyone, welcome back to this Angular course. This lecture we'll be focusing on components. Components in Angular is a very important module and it is the building block of an Angular application. Component controls the view. Component has a class and a template that are both combined to display a view inside an Angular application. Just like we did in Angular modules, we need to use the Angular. We need to use the component function and initialize a metadata object inside it with the properties to show that this is a component in this module. So there are some of the properties that we have to mention inside the metadata object. They are selector. Selector is a property, and selector is a property that gives a component a name so that we can refer to this component in other components. That means when you have multiple components, if you want to nest a component inside another component, you just need to use its selector so that it will also get displayed. It will be nested inside the component in which you are using. The second one is template URL. Template URL is a property where you are giving the path to your HTML file. Alternatively, you can use template, that is an inline option. If you can write the old HTML components inside in the metadata itself, you could do that as well. But that is not recommended, and it does not work for a large application. Providers is the third property. Just like in modules, here also providers is used to list all the services that are associated with this component. Okay, it's time to get our hands dirty. I'm going to teach you how to create an Angular application in just a couple of minutes. To create an Angular application, all you need is Angular CLI. But to install Angular CLI, you might need a Node package manager. So I will show you how to create an Angular application now. You can go to your command prompt and first check if you have installed npm. You can check in if you have installed npm by typing the command npm-v. Since I have installed npm, I can see the version that has been installed here. If you have not installed npm in your machine, you will be getting npm is not a keyword that is recognized. So I am good to go. If you guys don't have npm, please download npm before you can install Angular CLI. So now, since I have npm, I'm going to install Angular CLI. The command is npm install -g for global. Angular CLI is just another Angular library, so it's @angular/CLI. Pressing enter. So this shows that that Angular CLI is getting installed in my machine globally. Let's wait for a couple of seconds so that it gets installed. Yes, so my Angular CLI got installed. Next we need to create an application with an application name. So I am going to go to the app location where I want to create my application. So I have gone to the desired location where I want to create my new application. So the command now I have to give is ng-new followed by the application name, whatever you feel like giving. I'm going to give ng-new demo app. So it will ask you a couple of questions. It is nothing but which it configures some settings for you. So it asks whether you want to add Angular routing. I will be explaining routing in the upcoming lectures. For now, I'm going to give yes. And then it also gives an option of which kind of style sheet you're going to use. As you can see, CSS is the first option. The other options that are listed are CSS preprocessors. If you are comfortable with those preprocessors, you can go with it, or otherwise you can just press enter with CSS. I've chosen CSS now, so it is creating our application right now, as you can see. It will take a couple of seconds since it has to create all the files for us, required files for us. So this command is creating all these files for us, which are part of every Angular application. Going check. Okay. So as you can see, it is getting installed. It is not installed completely. Yes, it's so we've got a message that it has successfully initialized. So next we just have to go into that folder directory, and we can straight away serve it, or just if you give ng serve, your application will be served. So in just less than 2 minutes we got our Angular application running. First time when you're loading it, usually compiles all the packages. It will take another few seconds to show the message. It will show you the URL and the port. Default URL is localhost :4200. That is the default port. Yes, this is how a new Angular application looks for. They have already created all these templates just to show what all it is capable of. Now I'll open this application to show you what all files are there, and I'll explain each file in detail. So the first place we have to go is source app, and we can see all the we covered in the last lecture that by default every Angular application will be having the app module and app components and the associated uh, style sheets and templates with it. So first let's take a look at the app component. This is what plain or a generated component looks like. We can see that the selector here is, since this is the root component, they have given the name as app root. You can change it for root. It is not advised for you to change. If you want to change for any other component, you have to just mention like this. Before that you have to import this component so that we can use this function. Template URL, since they are always the template and the component will be in the same directory, we are just mentioning /app_component.html, which is here. So this is the code that they have already written for us, because we are seeing an application right in that. So you can see that code here. We can just remove it. It's just like a placeholder instead of having nothing there. And you can see the CSS file. So since I have chosen CSS style sheet, it has created a CSS file. If I had chosen Sass or SAS style sheet, then you would have got SAS style sheet here. It's totally based on your preference and knowledge. So I've deleted everything in that, and let's go to the next slide so that I can explain you more. Okay, so we saw the template, which was very normal, this normal HTML, but Angular has some other template features that make Angular very powerful. The first one of that is data binding. Data binding allows you to bind data from your component class to your template. So you can initialize any value from your component, and then directly you can display it in your template. I'll show. What I'm going to do now is, for each of these features, I'm going to create it in the application and show you, so that you get a good understanding of it. So first one is data binding. For that, I'll just create a simple div with ID, or not even, we're not going to manipulate it, so we can just have div. And then first I will just create, instead of title, yes, let's have this as title, and we can change this. This is the demo application. So I'm initializing the value of title over here. You guys might ask why they haven't, since this is using TypeScript, they haven't used the type here. Unless or until you are using this variable inside any TypeScript function, you don't need to mention the type. So you can even you can even use ES6 here. Since I've not used this variable in any function, I haven't given type here, so it will work fine. The HTML, I'm just going to to bind the data that we have initialized in component, all we have to do is, inside any HTML element, whatever you want, div, you can just give double, you have to enclose it within double open and close curly braces. That is what that means. We are binding some data from class. So I'm saving this, and it already reloaded. The good thing about Angular is it always looks for changes and reloads itself. So that is data binding. And now the another feature that we can do is property binding. We can even give the value of a HTML attribute from class. So that is what is called property binding. I'll show an example of how you can use property binding in Angular. We can insert an image. Before that, I'll just have some images for our app. So I'm going through the folder Windows Explorer. It's always good to have all your images and other stuff inside assets. So I've copied all those images. It will be useful while I'm going to develop this application. So image, if you're going to bind a property, all you have to do is type that property inside square brackets, and I have to initialize that variable, initialize any variable here, so that I can bind that path to that property in the template. I'm going to give initialize called image, and then I usually use double quotes. For it's your preference whether you want double or single quotes. Image, and now I'm going to give the path. So I've stored in assets, so I just need to go on directory up and then select assets, and then dot the file name. I've initialized the image variable here. I'm going to bind the path of the image over here using the variable that we declared initialized in the component. So we have initialized the source to the variable that we declared in component. Let's see whether we have got an image. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I've made some mistake with the path. Yes, I think it didn't reload the time, so yeah, it's correct now. So we achieved property binding as well. We initialize the variable there and we use that variable in the template to get that path. So that is property binding. Next is event binding. So when you click on a button, you need to have an on-click function or on-click method. So in Angular we can just mention it as inside the parenthesis whatever event we want to trigger. So I'm going to show how to do that now. For that I'm going to create a div title counter /div, and then maybe we have to create the button. Let's see if you have got the output there. Yes, we have got the button over there. Okay, my idea what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a click counter. Whenever I click this button, it will keep increasing by 1. So it actually means that it is counting the number of clicks that you have made since the page is loaded. So we have to display the count inside the div. I might have to use it inside a function, so I'm just giving it as I'm giving a type to it because I'll be using the typed function. You can first initialize it. So we are using data binding here. I think the name is count, right? Yes, count. Okay, I'm saving it. Save that as well. Yes, we got a 0 here. Now if you see, it is very clumsy. There is no space between the upper image and the thing. So let's delve into our CSS part. Let's see the ID of those things. Let's give an ID to this button as well, so that we can give styles to that. Okay, all I'm going to do is counter. Sorry, it's for counter. I'm going to, since it is right next to the image, I'm going to give a space between. I think 50 would be a good space. Margin left also, because it was too leftmost, so I might give some space. Okay, let's check once if these things. Yes. I think I might have to reduce the margin top since it is too down. Yeah, I mean it's not loaded. Yeah, that's good. And then I'll change the margin top and margin left for the button as well. I will modify it to 40 because I wanted to write above it. I want the count to be right above the button. Okay, we are good. So now we are. I'm going to share since I'm showing you the event handler. We haven't done event binding yet. So all you have to do is you have to give inside parentheses you have to give the event, which is click, and then you have to give the corresponding method that we are going to use for the event handling. Inside the class, I'm going to create a function called action. Now in TypeScript it is fine to not include function when you're writing a method inside a class. So my function name is going to be action, and it is not going to return anything. Okay, on click what I have to do is, so to access this count value I have to increase the count each time the user is clicking the button. So to access this the value of count, we have to use this dot count. Since it is inside this class namespace, to use that inside the function you have to use this keyword in TypeScript. Okay, so we have to map it to this function. All you have to give the function name that we have written right there, action. I think now it will work. Oh. Action is there, counters. Did I save it? I think the mistake is with click is action. Oh yes, I didn't click. Yes, that is the mistake. So for the function I just left the two parentheses, so that was a mistake, that it was not working. It was not referring to the correct function there, so it was not working right now. So now the event binding is working. As we click on this, this is going to the function that we assigned here for click, and that function increases the count as when it is called. It is a simple function that I have written to show event binding. So let's go to the next concept that we have to learn. Event handling. So I would like to show a more complex example for event handling. So instead of just one image, I'm going to show how to add multiple images. going to create a string array and I'm going to initialize it with multiple images for event handling. So since I copied a number of images right now, I'm going to use it. What are the function images name? So it's stay home underscore 1. Underscore 2. So we are initializing an array of paths, and then we will create another value. Since we have only 3 images, if the count goes more than 2, we have to reset it to 0. So that's what I'm going to do. So on click, I'm going to increase it by 1 plus equal to, or you can just use so I'm increasing the value of it on click, and then inside I'm going to check if the value is going greater than 2. Since the array indexes start from 0, so 3 is the maximum would be 2. So if it goes more than 2, what I'm going to do is change it to 0 again, and I'm going to this dot image, I'm going to give the corresponding path based on the value. And do we have to change anything there? Image is there. Let's see if this works. Yes, our event handler works successfully. Yes, as you can see, as we click, not only the number is changing, even the images get changed. Okay, so that is a bit of event handling for you. You can use it in a more useful way also. And now we are going to see two-way binding. This is a very important feature in Angular templates and a very useful tool too. So two-way binding is nothing but it allows the updates happens two ways. You bind a property value from class to your template, and the user is changing that value, and that value gets changed in your class as well when the user changes. So the changes come from class to template and template to class back. So that is two-way binding. Let me show a good example so that you will get a good idea about it and how useful it would be. Okay, for that let me create, this would be this can be better explained using text box input text box. So to use two-way binding, first thing we have to do is go to app module, and we have to import the forms module. Without forms module we can't use the two-way binding, because it is most used in forms, where user can give an input so that the value from both ends will be synced. So it is from Angular forms module, I guess. Angular slash forms. Yes, so Angular forms library, and you have to import that module so that you can use it. So we have imported the module, so this will be working. So let us do our functionality. I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a div with an ID. Inside that, I'm asking this question to have an input box. I'm going to give input type equal to text, and then I'm going to close the div. Let's see. First, let's see the HTML, the template output. Yes. Let's keep it down so that it looks good. I think it would have gone down right now. Yes. What I'm going to do is, first we are going to initialize a string value. And I'm going to give yes. So we can first bind it from our template. Change this. Okay, value. Let's see if our default input is getting outputted. Property value does not exist. Okay, let's take a look. What? Okay, I didn't change there. Okay, I changed the name of the variable, but yes. So since we have given the value, since we have binded the value of value variable, which is yes, so we are getting here. So now we have to, how I can show you two-way binding is, now we have shown that you are displaying the value that you have initialized in the class component in your template. Now whenever the user is changing from here, it should get reflected in component as well. That's what I have to show, so that you guys get convinced about the two-way binding. So now we have, so the data is bind from component to template. Now to template to component we have to show the changes. So for that we need to have a event binding of key up whenever the user changes the value to yes, to either no, or and we can call it's a default event handler, or some of the default actions that is already inbuilt in Angular on key, and you have to give the event. So whenever the user changes something, the on key will get triggered. Now we have to write that function here. so that there is some action when user changes on key, and we can get that even whatever any, it can be of type any. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the value in console, so that you can see whenever the user changes, this thing in the component will also get changed. I'll save it. Okay, so we are all set to witness data two-way binding. Yes, so I'll open the developer tools so that I can show you the console. So what we have written is, like, whenever user changes, the value in the component should also get changed. So this is from what I am showing now is from template to your component. See, now I changed one letter, I removed one letter, and it is getting it also got updated in the component as well. Yes, this is two-way binding. Whatever we are printing, it's getting updated in the variable in the component. That is two-way binding. It's a very important feature and a very useful feature as well. So this is all about data binding. As you can see, we saw value binding, and then we saw property binding, and then we saw event binding, and then we saw two-way binding, which is very special to Angular. Now we are going to see something called the pipes. Pipes is nothing but pipes allow us to do value transformations, whatever you want. It is nothing but it formats your text in a specific format. So we have some default pipes, like the date. If you give this date a pipe, then it will format the text as per as how date should be displayed. So pipes are given by this. Pipes are given by the symbol. Pipes are denoted by the symbol. I'll display a date, and I'll format the date using this date pipe, so that you can. There are it is not limited to just date. There are many more default pipes that you can use. You can just go through the Angular documentation of what all pipes that are available, so that you can make use of it for formatting. So now I'm going to print date. Hashtag. We need to initialize. I'm going to bind from the component. I'm going to give the name as today. Today is equal to, since I'm not going to use this in the TypeScript, I'm not giving any type. So we are creating a date object, so that it will display today's date and time details. Now let us display as it is whatever we are getting. I'm doing this to show the difference when we use pipes. So I saved it. Yeah, as you can see, we have everything, like from Tuesday, not only the date, everything, whatever gets initialized when we initialize the data object is displayed right now. Now I'm going to use the pipes, so that we can just get the date out of that object. All you have to do is that pipe symbol, you have to put that pipe symbol, and then you have to mention date. Since this is date, since I'm showing date, I'm just sticking to that. You can use other pipes as you learn more about it. So now I have changed it to /pipe. We are using pipe to transform it. See how beautifully it formatted. But previously it was not. It didn't have any comma like that. It had the whole data. Now it just scraped the data out of the data and just displaying the data right now. I'll just go back again, so that you can see the difference of how much formatting it is giving. How easy it is to format date here. I just saved. So you have the day, date, the time. Time, the time zone, everything. But when you just give /date, this thing does magic, that you just get the date. Oh, yeah, my bad. Yes, this is the power of pipe. So pipe is generally used for formatting and value transformations. You can learn more about pipes when you go to the Angular documentation. Since this is going to be a short video, I'm not going to explain all the pipes to you. The next one is directives. Directives is a cool feature of Angular. It almost saves you lines of HTML tags. So now I will show you how to use directives. There are two types of directives. One is structural directives and another one is attribute directives. Structural directives are loops, iteration, for loops. It's nothing but the for loops. So the name for it is star ng for here, and then it is for if conditional statement star ng if. How cool is it that we can use these statements inside a template? Let's see how we can make good use of it. So now I'm going to show with the structural directives first. Let me go to, for that I'm going to give a rather simple example, not going too complex. What I'm going to do is create a string array called days. I'm going to initialize it here, day 1, day 2 and day 3. I've initialized this variable here called days, and now I'll show, first we'll see the iteration, how we can make use of iteration here, structural directive. So I'm going to create an unordered list. Inside that I'm going to create a list object. So we have three days that we are going to display. If it was a traditional way of doing it, we'll be doing something like this. In normal HTML, all we can do is write 3 lines of code to print 3 values or 3 list elements. This is how we did in HTML. Let's get reloaded. Yeah, to print these 3 values we had to type 3 lines of code. Now what I'm going to do is just replace it by 1 line of code with the structural directive ng for, and inside that I'm just going to iterate with for of. Is nothing but for of that we use in JavaScript. For is outside, and let day of days. Days is nothing but the string array. So I'm just going to print the days, day, one by one. Now I've saved it and it's going to get reloaded. Let's see what we have. The same output. See how many lines of, we have saved 2 lines of code. Imagine if it is a very big list, how many lines of code we can save. So that is the power of structural directives in Angular. For me, I think it is very cool that we could reduce the code, and it is so simple. The code is really simple. So next one is ngIf. Imagine that you can either hide or show an element only based on a condition. Previously, if you had to do in normal HTML, CSS, or either JavaScript, you have to just get that element, and then you have to give some, in if it's in jQuery you have to hide it, or if it is you are using CSS, you can just give display none. So now all we are going to do is, based on a condition whether to display or not, we are going to hide or show it. So I'm going to create another remark inside this list base. Yes, I'm going to give remark let's have is instead of what I said 6. So now yeah, now we will print. Good. I forgot. So ng if, all we have to do is ng if, and we need a variable from component. We need a boolean variable for it, because either it will either show it or not show it based on the boolean variable, so it should be true or false. So I'm going to give it as Dacian, that's a good name for this, and it is of type boolean, and I'm going to give true, and then I'm going to save this, going to HTML ngf. I have to give the variable name so that it will either display or not based on that variable value. So I've saved both the ends. Let's see. I've given true, and you can see, please don't mind the layout. This is a simple example, so I didn't do that fancy. Or if you want, this H6 got H1 got displayed over here. H6 got displayed over here based on the decision. So since we have given true, it is getting printed. If we give false, then it won't be displayed. How cool is that? This is a very simple example, but you can as the application gets complex, you can make some computation, and based on that you can make a decision whether to display it or not display it. That will be a very good feature and very good way to handle views. So that's about structural directives. Attribute directives is nothing but the two-way binding ng model that I showed is attribute directives. So these are the features. Now I think you guys would could recognize that how helpful these template features will be for us while developing. Angular stands out in these template features. It is really robust and very handy to use these tools and make our view very dynamic. So that's all about components. I think you guys would have enjoyed this video. If you have any doubt, please feel free to leave it in the comment section. Thank you so much. The next Angular concept that we'll be focusing on will be services and DI. Take a look at the application we just created for one moment. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.